Great. Okay, so we'll get started. Welcome, everyone. I hope you're on the right place as you see here on the screen. This is our Promising Practices Roundtable. In this month, we're going to be talking about shared responsibilities, institutions, educators, and the support of undocumented students. I see a lot of familiar faces in the chat, but also new faces. So welcome to everyone. This is our first Promising Practice Roundtable, actually, of the fall 2025 semester. These roundtables are our monthly virtual meetings for California educators to learn the tools and strategies they need to support undocumented student access and success in higher education. And you can see the rest of our offerings for the fall semester here on the screen. We actually have an exciting brand new website that you can also check out to learn more and learn how to sign up for these offerings here. I know we also have some folks joining us from outside of California, so welcome to you all too. And I hope that you can kind of take some of the practices from today, some of the strategies, and apply them also to the context of your own state. So my name's Madeline Villanueva, she, her pronouns. I'm the interim director of higher education here at Immigrants Rising, and I'm also gonna hand it over to my co-facilitator for today, Rocio, to also let us know, to introduce herself and let us know what to expect for our hour and a half together.
Thank you, Madeline. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Rocio Preciado, and I'm the Career Pathways Innovation Strategist here at Immigrants Rising. Very excited to be here in the space. And for today's session, we are going to cover very key topics. So Madeline, if we can go to the next slide. So for today's session, you will deepen your understanding of the systemic and institutional challenges undocumented students and support staff face in the current political climate. I know there are a lot of things currently happening and things are constantly shifting. So we do want to continue to keep ourselves up to date with some of those different challenges that we continue to come across. As well as gain some strategies to strengthen supportive and sustainable environments for undocumented students and dedicated staff. You all play a critical role, and so we do want to make sure that you all are included in the conversation as to how to best support and strengthen that support environment for staff who are doing the work directly with students. And you'll also get to reflect on your role in the undocumented student support ecosystem, which Madeline would guide us through a really great presentation and session to be able to see where do we all see ourselves in that ecosystem of support. If we'll go to the next slide. And I did forget to mention, so we are going to be having a raffle. So this will be a $25 gift card raffle. So if you fill out the evaluation for today's session, and if you entered your email and your name, you'll be entered into the $25 gift card raffle. So we highly encourage you to fill out the evaluation, fill in your name. $25 could be great for quick little takeout, some coffee. So please make sure that you stay around for the end of the session so that you can participate in our raffle. Now, the overview for today's agenda. So we went ahead and did some of the welcome and the check-in. We are going to be having a grounding, which is going to be led and facilitated by our colleague, Myra Barragan O'Brien. We're also going to be going over doing an overview of strengthening undocumented support ecosystem, which will be led by Madeline. And we're also going to be having a promising practices panel. We're going to be having our panelists share some key lessons, takeaways, and information that you can take with you, and also an opportunity for you to dive more into the conversation as well. And then we're going to continue with building collective solutions breakouts. So there will be an opportunity for you to engage with other members of the group. Now, this will be a great opportunity to even allow you to expand your network, maybe meet something new, and dive even deeper in the conversations that we're going to be covering today. And then we're going to go into our closing, where you'll have the opportunity to fill out our post-evaluation as well. Now, if we can go to our next slide. So we're gonna go ahead and dive into our check-in. So we do have a QR code here in the slide. You can also go to this little.com link with code number 3022731. And in this check-in question, our check-in question for today is, share one word to describe how undocumented student support work is going for you. And Madeline did share the link in the chat for you to be able to have access to it in case you need it. And we're gonna pull up some of the responses. Emotionally challenging seems one that is coming up a lot. Challenging in itself. Yeah, complicated. Uncertainty. Tiring. And then we also see another part of it, which is rewarding. High stakes. Strong. Comprehensive. Very nice. Yet oftentimes under-resourced. We'll give you all a couple more seconds to share. Great. Thank you all so much for sharing. And we are going to transition to the next part, but feel free to continue to share your word. We'll definitely be keeping these in the background. So we're gonna go ahead and transition to our next activity. And just with the things that you all shared, I think it's having Myra, our mental health senior manager, I think is gonna be a very good transition into diving into the conversation. And so thank you all so much for sharing. And so I'm gonna go ahead and pass it on to Myra Barragan O'Brien, who is our mental health senior manager, to guide us through a grounding activity and transition us into the space.
Thank you so much for the invitation. And I see you, I hear you, I see those responses. And so before we get to grounding ourselves, I want to acknowledge something very, very important. The work that you do for undocumented students is often unseen. As I see, it's challenging, is unsupported at times. And sometimes it feels like you don't know whether it's even making a difference. And yet you're here because you care, because you want to advocate for them. And so I just want to acknowledge that your presence matters and everything that you do matters deeply. So I know that sometimes the work can feel heavy, especially in times like today. So I want to invite you to take the next 5 minutes just for yourself so that you can ground yourself and so that you're able to take in this information. I know that a lot of you might be answering emails or taking care of other tasks at the same time that you are here, but I want to encourage you to give you the gift of just 5 minutes for yourself, because the work that you are doing is very heavy. So I'm going to invite you to practice an exercise called the butterfly hug. And let's begin by sitting down comfortably. If you can, put your feet on the ground and let your hands rest on the side for now. I'm going to invite you to take a deep breath, a collective deep breath. Just breathe in through your nose and take a long exhale through your mouth. Let's do that again. In through your nose and out through your mouth. I'm going to invite you to go ahead and cross your thumbs in this way and open your fingers. You can feel free to wiggle them and bring this butterfly to your chest, where your fingers are just right underneath your collarbone. If this doesn't feel comfortable, go ahead, just place them in this way. And if that still doesn't feel comfortable, you can put your hands on below your shoulders, kind of like giving yourself a hug. And your arms represent that hug. And gently tap one wig.
Yes, Lord.
One wig at a time. Okay. Don't forget to breathe as you are tapping, one at a time. Left, right, left, right. Keep it gently and steady. As you keep tapping, bring your awareness back to your breath. As you exhale in, you can say, my work matters. As you exhale, even if I cannot see the results yet. Inhale. I am not alone in this work. Exhale. We are stronger together. Inhale. I honor my students' lives and pathways. Exhale. I honor my journey as well. And tapping slow. And I'm going to invite you that as you inhale, affirmations that are calling in right now. As you exhale, make those stronger affirmations. Yeah. As you're done, time, tell, my word is making an impact. Exhale. I am not doing this alone. I have a whole community with me. If you feel ready, feel free to let those wings down and put them back on your lap. Wiggle those fingers, wiggle those toes. You were closing your eyes, open them when you feel ready. You were looking down, Look at your surroundings and name 5 things that you can see. Sun outside, computer in front of you, maybe your phone in front of you. If you can, touch 5 things around you as you name them. Your mouse, your coffee mug. Just allow yourself to name them so that you can come back to this space. As I leave this space and you come back to hear from other folks in here, I want you to carry the reminder that your efforts, even the ones that others don't see, are a part of creating dignity and safety and opportunities and hope for your students. So carry that with you. That's the only thing. Great. And the next hour and a half or so that you're gonna and I'll stay here in that.
Thank you, Myra. I think we still hear your sound. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
We'll just...
It is not letting me. So let me figure that out.
There it is. Okay, thank you so much, Myra, for leading us in that grounding too. I hope folks were able to take even 1 minute or 2 minutes out of being here and whatever else you're also holding to take part in that. Yeah, and thank you for folks who also participated in our check-in, right? I think rightly so, we are seeing a lot of uncertainty, challenging, tiring, a lot of negative words in our undocumented student support like work and landscape right now. And so I'm going to transition us back into our slides and actually get us started in thinking about the undocumented support ecosystem, because I think, as we all know, the challenges are most likely not going to stop anytime soon. The needs are going to keep increasing in this current climate that we're in, and we're not necessarily getting any more resources or support with this climate also that we're in. And so how can we kind of increase capacity and increase and kind of build this undocumented support ecosystem? So even though the needs are increasing, right, there is the support is coming from more than one place. And so that's what we hope to do a little bit in this grounding here, in this overview that we have. And so with that, I kind of want to get us started with just this framework for thinking about undocumented student support. You can think about this as levels that build on top of each other, and there's also movement within these levels, right? Depending on the institutional, local, or even national context. But undocumented student support often really starts at the individual or foundational level, where it's just one person or two folks who are providing that support, meeting those undocumented student needs. And then when those folks find each other or they activate other allies and supporters, it moves into this emerging level where it's a group of folks providing services, meeting the needs, doing that support. And it's really from this emerging level where, through these group of people's efforts and advocacy, that we can get to the comprehensive or institutional level, where support is like in the fabric of the system, of the campus, of the organization that it is in. And so ideally, right, we do want to get to that institutional and comprehensive system, level, but we know that different context makes it more possible than others. And we also have to think a lot about like resources that exist right in the climate. But I think as folks are moving through this meeting, we do want you to kind of reflect on where your campus or institution is at in this level and what are the things that you can take from this meeting, the practices, the tools that either help you move up in this framework or even maintain or strengthen in the level that you're in now too. Because again, I think we see like depending on the political climate, depending on what's happening in the institution, there can also be some movement within this support, right? And so how do we kind of like sustain where we are at now, to maintain that level of support or strengthen it, right, from this meeting. And so when we think about at the institutional level of support at campuses, this often shows up as the undocumented student program, right? A Dream Resource Center or DRC, and and ideally there would be some like dedicated permanent staff or at least some sort of staffing that's not just students, right, to provide the support for undocumented students. This can also, in organizations, I think I've also seen institutionalized support as undocumented student duties being kind of like incorporated in somebody's job description as well, right? If not a dedicated position for that. And as we all know, undocumented student programs and their staffing work to meet undocumented student needs at our campuses and community, right? Either through one-on-one support or programming with a list of what those needs are here on the screen as well. This is like several, but there could be a few missing too, right? And campuses often kind of have priorities and services that meet some, if not all, or even more of these needs. And I think in this work as well, undocumented student programs are also trying to meet staff needs, right? And most oftentimes in the service of those student needs that we're seeing on the screen. But also depending even sometimes on the campus climate, there is a need to like educate and train staff more urgently, I think speaking to today's climate too, that calls on the undocumented student program to also provide this support or the dedicated staff member to provide this support. And we know, as we saw in our check-in today, like that can really, the level of needs and support is also really impacted by the political and social climate. And so in this analogy that we have, I think in a milder political and social climate where maybe it's a light kind of rain, the undocumented student program is like enough to withstand and cover kind of all this need, right? But if it's like in a storm, as we're seeing today, it's hard for one umbrella to provide coverage for this without kind of bending and breaking, as we're also seeing with, folks reporting a lot of overwhelm, right? Burnout, some staff turnover. And so what can we do to kind of strengthen this umbrella that the undocumented student program or dedicated staffing provide when we also are kind of dealing with maybe less resources than normal or an unfavorable climate campus-wise and out in the world as well too, right? And so I think that's kind of where the ecosystem comes into picture. Even though we can't necessarily like buy or create a bigger umbrella for the undocumented student program, who are the other like campus and community stakeholders and actors that we can tap into to also get them to activate and open up their umbrella to meet some of these needs as well, right? So thinking about the enrollment and financial aid needs that we saw in the other slide, how can we tap into partners in the financial aid, admissions, registrar outreach, community-based organization, feeder schools to help meet the needs in this issue area here? Thinking about that academic support, mentorship, postgraduate pathways, transfer pathways. How can we also do collaborations and tap into the umbrellas of folks from counseling, EOP, EOPS, career and transfer centers if they exist, faculty, and some of those legal support, basic needs, mental health, right? Here again, some the other organizations or departments that we can tap into to provide coverage in those areas. And then speaking of those staff needs as well, what role can administrators, the campus task force, community-based organization play in providing some of these undocumented ally trainings and sharing these best practices and strategies, and addressing kind of the legal and policy updates, campus safety. How can we also tap into administrators, legal counsel, campus task force to help provide coverage in those needs? And there's green arrows here, I think, to also symbolize the instrumental work and the entry point and the driving point that the undocumented student program can take in this ecosystem. But how can we kind of like activate and tap into these other umbrellas so that there's multiple kind of coverage of these needs that's not necessarily just falling on one person, especially when there's so much that our community is looking for or is needing at the moment too. And do want to give a quick example of what these partnerships can look like in the example of enrollment for undocumented students and the key departments that can work together to streamline the process for both students from the application process to the AB 540 and financial aid applications, so that it's also easier on staff in handling these processes as well. And then we did talk a little bit in the previous slide too about task forces. And so I do want to share this resource that we have that talks a little bit more about task forces. And for folks who are maybe at the foundational individual level at their campus, is there a way to think about increasing capacity for undocumented student support in your campus or region through task forces? We always get a lot of allies, campus allies, community allies who are willing to support during challenging times. And so a task force is one way to provide structure and actionize that support, really address some of those needs and priorities with greater need, and also get buy-in from different folks since they are involved in the task force. And I forgot to define task force a little bit, but it's included here in the resource. It is a small group of campus or community campus or community stakeholders who can work in building or institutionalized support for undocumented students in our region. And the resource does also talk a little bit about different best practices in forming those task forces, as well as potential focus areas that's listed here on the screen as well. And then I do see a quick question in the chat that I will read right now and see if I can answer. Value of community sports be impacted by all this. Yeah, thank you, Inez, for sharing that question. Maybe some of our panelists can also touch on this in some of their answers, but I think what we're looking at in this ecosystem is how can we kind of like tap into more folks to like to do this work, like to provide this support, so that it's not necessarily just falling on one person or not, while recognizing that some of those folks are also impacted, right? So I think that's really where we're pulling in kind of like, what is the group effort? What is the institutional effort we can do so that we are not leaning on just one person or one department to do this work, especially if they're also being impacted themselves. I might not be answering your question as well as you would like to, or if I'm not understanding it, but feel free to come back to the chat to clarify, or even private message one of us to get a little bit more clarity on your question. But I'm gonna probably wrap up our grounding here and kind of transition us to the panel, because now that we understand a little bit of what this ecosystem can look like, we want to hear from campuses of what this does look like on their institutions and what have they done to kind of build and maintain and strengthen this ecosystem, especially in today's climate. And so I'm going to transition it over to Rocio to introduce our panelists.
Thank you, Madeline. So for this next portion of our promising practice, We do have three incredible panelists. So we have Dr. Abigail Garcia Paton, who is the Vice President of Academic Affairs at LA Trade Tech College. Welcome, Abigail. We also have Kim Gomez, who is the Director of the Dream Resource Center at CSU Sacramento. Welcome, Kim. And we also have Elizabeth Tamayo, who is an outreach specialist for Dream Resource Center at College of the Desert. And so we have a very beautiful and diverse panel today who are going to speak to different components of the ecosystem. And we do have some questions for our panelists to be able to help guide the conversation. And if you as a listener have some questions, feel free to add them in the chat, and then we'll also have an opportunity for people to share questions as well. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So this is for all of our panelists. So if you can please introduce yourself and share a quick overview of your work with undocumented students. And we'll have Dr. Abigail go first.
Buenos dias, everyone. Good morning. My name is Abby Patton, and it's a pleasure to be here with you all today. Full disclosure, I've been in a new position at LA Trade Tech as the vice president. Before that, I was at Chabot College in a dean role and also as the HSI director. And so I'm still trying to find my footing here at my current institution in terms of supporting undocumented students in our Dream Resource Center. And so I'm going to share a lot of my experience in my previous institution, but this work has always been hard work for me. When I first started as the HSI director at Chabot College, we did not have a Dream Resource Center. And I think there's this idea that we're just coupling resources. And so because I was the HSI director, I was also taking the lead on creating a space for undocumented students on our campus. Within that first year, we were able to get a Catalyst grant, which propelled us to be able to actually open up a center. And there was a lot of groundwork that had been happening even before I got there. But part of my work when I was the HSI director was figuring out how do we make sure that we're bridging resources. As a Title V institution with HSI funding, there is this there's regulation that we are not allowed to support undocumented students with that funding. And so we had to be really strategic about how are we supporting the work of undocumented students, also not labeling this as this is only an issue that impacts our Latinx community, right, as the HSI director. So having to be very forward with that message as well, ensuring that our other immigrant communities understood that this was a space for them as well. And then some of the more innovative work that I did while I was at the college was thinking about how are we connecting the dots for our undocumented student population so that it wasn't that they had to go to several different spaces. So the Dream Resource Center was one way, but also thinking about behind the scenes as we support students. The big disconnect at my previous institution was being able to see the student journey, the undocumented student journey from the time that they apply in admissions. And so that was the hardest barrier for our students, whether they were AB 540 students or not. And thinking about their residency status and what that looked like. And so what we did is we created a position that allowed for somebody that worked in our Dream Resource Center, had the specialization and the experience, and also the ability to work with undocumented students, because not every person has the empathy, compassion, and experience to be able to do so. And that person also became an expert in admissions and records. So that person was able to support with all the onboarding for the students from the beginning of admissions all the way through with, connection to legal services, connection to food pantry, connection to employment. And so it was a way to kind of close the loop for students. And that was a big part of my job as HSI director. But even when I became an academic dean, it was such a foundation of the work that I had done at the institution that even though I was not directly overseeing, I still was part of, we created a task force. So I was very active in the task force, made sure that they received the resources that they supported, advocated in spaces. And so Now at this current institution that I'm at, it falls under student services. I'm a vice president of academic affairs, so I don't directly oversee it, but I do intentionally bring space for our even our Dream Resource Center. So we had the latest example, we had some politicians here for an event, and I brought the politicians over to our Dream Resource Center. I'm like, look at the incredible space and also the opportunities that we still have it. We had more resources, right? So in every space that I occupy, I'm constantly thinking about how is this impacting our disproportionate communities, and particularly our undocumented students.
Thank you so much, Abigail. Thank you so much for sharing. We'll go ahead and pass it on to Elizabeth, and then we'll go with Kim.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Tamayo. I am the outreach specialist for our Dreamer Resource Center here at College of the Desert. We're located in the Coachella Valley. It's an honor to be here, and thank you for having me. Essentially, I am the guide for our students. I am the first person that they see, and making sure that they have all their ducks in the row, connecting them with key departments and staff. With financial aid, admissions, and records, while also knowing key important aspects of all the departments involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Kim?
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Kim Gomez. My pronouns are she, her, and ella in Espanol, and I'm the director of the Dreamer Resource Center at Sacramento State. Fingers up. And I have been in this role for about a year now. Previously, I was the coordinator of the DRC, and most recently, because of an IRA student fee increase that happened, all of the cultural academic centers are now fully staffed with 3 full-time staff, a graduate intern, 3 program assistants, and on my side, I have 4 outreach fellows through the College Corps program that's here at Sac State. And so we're very fortunate. This is very new. It just started this fall semester, so I've been operating as a one-person as I know many centers do, it's just one individual. And so I'm excited to provide my expertise and experience doing it solo, and how I've been able to bring in different stakeholders like admissions, financial aid, bursars, and so forth to support our center. At the DRC, I oversee all programming, fundraising, student support, community building, connecting with politicians as well, and ensuring that our center is supporting our mission of making the dream of a college degree reality for our undocumented and mixed status students, as well as our staff and faculty.
Hey, wow. Thank you all so much for sharing. And it seems like you all have played critical roles in the different journeys of students and even working with other educators and administrators. And I know that some of you started speaking about it too in your introduction. So feel free to add to the following question, to the next question, which is, how did you contribute to building an ecosystem of support for undocumented students at your campus, and what key staff and departments are included? So feel free to add if there's anything that you would like to add in reference to that question.
I can go ahead and go. So I found that what has been working and effective for our students is that for every student that walks in, I want to make sure that they do feel seen, heard, and welcomed, and also contributing to that as a building support system. I found that that's been effective, to engage with each individual and really just taking the time to get to know them, their story, and the challenges that they may face. And how I can support them within my role, whether it's even navigating financial aid, getting started with the college processes, or addressing basic needs. That's all contributed to also building trust, and trust is a big key importance for our students. And with building that trust, it allows them to feel more welcomed and open. And so by opening up about those challenges, it's enabled me to effectively support them and more meaningfully. And then how I mentioned before, financial aid and admissions and records, we have been able to establish strong working relationships to be able to better support our students and connect our students.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else who would like to add to that question?
Yes, I can add. So something that I did to develop strong relationships is ensuring that our key stakeholders like bursars, residency, admissions, our student service centers, so anything with holds and to-do list and paperwork that students have to fill out, as well as our career center and basic needs. I feel like those are some of the key centers, offices, programs that our students need to connect with at some point due to their status and that I need to connect with. And so all of these offices have a mandatory Undocu Ally training that their entire staff complete. All of the offices have an Undocu Ally sticker right outside, so you can see it as soon as you walk in that all of these individuals are trained, Undocu Ally trained. And then what's also very important in maintaining this relationship is, like Elizabeth mentioned, the trust. And so all of these individuals are on the Undocu task force and they regularly visit the center. So our student service liaison, his name's Jose Gallegos. He's amazing. And he comes to the DRC maybe 3 times a week. And so our students are very familiar with who he is. And this also alleviates the pressure from when it was just me at the center doing everything. So Jose really ensured that he was present in the center and I was able to do warm handoffs, whether it was walking students over or sending him a Teams chat with what the problem is, or him walking over to the center. And this is the same with residency and with bursars. I connected with our refund specialist who, and, you know, all of our students pick up their Dream Service Incentive grants from. They pick up their checks from there. And so they came to our open house. They are very active with communicating with the students. The students know who this individual is. And so I feel like by connecting all of these individuals and making them feel like they're a part of the DRC community, they also feel, I feel a bit more inclined to help us out and prioritize us. And so I definitely think that that's helped build relationships with the students and the staff from various centers and also alleviate work on my end.
Wow. Thank you, Kim. Thank you so much for sharing and like being able to really speak to that ability to build relationships across departments and even within your department to be able to team task. Abby, anything you would like to add?
I feel like I answered that question in my very lengthy introduction, so I'll leave it there.
Thank you. So now this question is for you, Elizabeth. So how has your institution, this institutional support helped students? Like what is some of the impact that you've been able to see? And then also how has it supported staff, particularly the DRC staff?
Very good question. Thank you. So our institution has demonstrated a strong support system for students through strategic collaboration with key departments. Like I've said before, key departments are financial aid and admissions and records. So it has been a collective effort that has been also reinforced by the involvement of our deans, deans of counseling, deans of enrollment services, as well as our directors, our director of financial aid, admissions and records. So they have also laid the strong support and the foundation for it to be an effective collaborative effort. Currently, we have a financial aid specialist on site at our center once a week. So it does provide students with direct access, and it's also very consistently do that. It's every week. And given the long wait times that could potentially happen at our traditional financial aid offices, this gives our students direct access. And they put a face to our financial aid specialist, and so they recognize him and they know that this specialist is able to help them with any questions, concerns regarding financial aid. And also we hope to soon welcome an admissions and records specialist on site at our center as well, once a week, to also ensure the critical service of AB 540 and making sure that they have that on their student records. Another institutional support that we've implemented is partnering with our foundation office to provide internship opportunities. So this includes a scholarship stipend upon completion of 150 hours, and this is per semester. And so these internships that are great and our students is another resource that we can provide alongside DSIG. And this internship is available through internal and external sites as well. And so it provides that professional experience and that financial aid support that our students need. And again, just serving as an additional alternative for the DSIG program. And then additionally, we offer the EDGE Pledge program, which covers 2 free-year tuition for local high school graduates. So this initiative is also very key and important for our students, and especially for students that do not meet the AB 540 requirement. Again, this is another alternative that they have access to 2-year free tuition at our college. And then lastly, I do want to say also creating and establishing Alas con Futuro Student Club organization that luckily with the help of Mr. Simo, that's also here with us today, that has been established since 2008 when he first created this. Now we have created the momentum going forward as an advisor, as well as 3 other advisors for this club. And I found that this club has had the most impact and meaningful to our students. So the club provides a supportive environment where students feel seen, empowered, and connect with other peers going through the same things that they are going through. And so together we all plan, coordinate activities, events, social gatherings, again, just furthering that engagement and belonging. We currently have over 20 active students regularly participating. We actually have a meeting later today. And so it does take time and effort, and it does add an additional workload. But besides that, the confidence and the sense of belonging that we see and that our students gain through this club is the effort that is deeply worth very impactful for our students. So Alas con Futuro is more than just a club. It's a platform that empowers our students to lead, to advocate, and transform, and going forward for future generations.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Now, if you may add, how have you seen that impact the DRC staff and the center itself? Have you also seen it have an impact on the DRC?
Yes, of course. So collectively, through key departments, I can't stress that enough, financial aid, admissions and records, having dedicated specialists all involved, as well as our administrators that have laid the foundation. It does take a collective effort. And also to answer, I believe it was Ines Barragan's question, a way that it's impossible to leave it for one person to do everything without them feeling overwhelmed, especially in the crisis right now in the political climate. With all these key staff and departments all in the same page and providing that additional support, it really does help, and it really does make things easier, and also to make our students get the need that they need, and also continuing to be that support that they see.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Now, there's a couple of things that you talked about, Elizabeth, and which is like the different layers, which is the student involvement, there's frontline staff, and then there's also administrators. So now this transitions us to our next question. So Abby, what roles can administrators play, and how can the DRC folks better activate administrators?
Yeah, I think Elizabeth kind of framed everything perfectly in terms of where administrators need to be involved. It is a responsibility of ours. And so, we are policymakers, we are budget owners, we do the resource allocation. And so it is our responsibility to be advocating specifically for undocumented students and undocumented student resources. As an administrator, and whether it was in my director position, dean position, and currently in my VP position, it's also being able to identify where are there gaps, right? So where are the gaps in our admissions office? Where are our gaps with financial aid? Where are our gaps with our academic spaces? So currently my learning curve has been thinking about how to better support faculty to understand what their responsibility is in serving undocumented students, right? And so there's faculty autonomy of the classroom and the curriculum, but there's also ways to be able to support it through training, through professional development, through undocu trainings. Also through some of it can be, when you provide a training, sometimes you bring the people or the people who show up or the people who already understand our population. And so bringing it to convocation where everybody is going to be there and you have a captive audience is critical and it's important. Making sure that you provide the language for folks, whether it be syllabus language that you're providing for faculty to include as suggestions to include in their syllabus. So doing some of that groundwork, and these are all policies that administrators have influence. When you're thinking about budgets and how to make sure that you have dedicated budgets to support our undocumented student population, especially when there's peaks and times like where we are now, where there are a lot of concerns on whether or not an institution can share proudfully. And I think this is different from what we've seen in the last few years is, we're not collecting data anymore because collecting data for our undocumented student population is scary right now. And so we've had to pivot, but how do we still make sure that we understand where we're falling short in supporting our undocumented students? So I'm thinking about a dashboard. I'm thinking about still providing opportunities for students to be able for us to collect data, but collect data in a way that's not part of our software system, right? Our district system, so that our Dream Resource Center has that information, so that administrators have that information, but that it's secure and that we're not putting anybody at risk. And then, you are a voice for folks who are not at the table. And so I see that as a personal mission of mine to make sure that my voice is amplifying the voice of our undocumented student population. In terms of like, how do you activate administrators? I think there's different ways. I mean, there's folks who are going to naturally come to the table because they see a connection, a responsibility to the work. But we are student-centered, student-driven, and so bringing out stories of undocumented students to the table, sharing enrollment updates is important. Even though we don't want to admit it, like the connection to the SCIF with AB 540 status and looking at, what does it mean in terms of funding for the college and making that connection for administrators, like, now we have 100 less AB 540 students this year. That I'm just using it as a hypothetical. I'm not giving you an actual data number, but when you're putting a budget number, right, at what loss of funding we've had because we are not providing the adequate resources for undocumented students, then that I think makes the call for administrators like, okay, what do we need to do? How do we make sure that we bring back those numbers up so that because it's directly tied to the SCIF and directly tied to funding. And then, have clear asks. Like if you invite us to an event, put us on the spot and say like, hey, this is our ask. This is the gap that we see that in supporting our undocumented student population. What is your response to that? So that we are there to be responsive. And so I'm thinking about increasing visibility of administrators in these events, but I'm also thinking about how do you make sure that you leave, when I walk out of that space, I know exactly what all of your needs are. And it doesn't have to be, it could be in public setting, but it could also be as you're pulling somebody aside in, a big event, and you're telling them, this is, giving them a scope of the land of where how we're situated and what the gaps are. So it could be both, right? It could be you're asking them to be part of a panel, an administrator to be part of a panel and engage them in that dialogue, or it could be you pulling them to the side and letting them know. I think overall, in terms of activating administrators, like, never think that we don't want to be there. We even if it's like a small student gathering that you're having, an opportunity where you're providing like cafecito and dialogue for folks, invite us, because I think for us to be able to see and the work that's happening is important, and for us to be able to hear directly from students is critical.
Thank you. Thank you, Abby, so much, and for really uplifting the importance of staying in dialogue across departments and across people who are involved in this process. Now, I want to pass it on to Kim. Now, Kim, how can individuals or ally groups build, expand, or sustain this ecosystem? You did a very nice job of speaking about the different departments and being able to navigate through the different departments. How can folks build, expand, and sustain that ecosystem?
Thank you, Rocio, for the question. I'm not gonna lie, it's very challenging, and I think it's challenging especially during peak times, which is always beginning of the semester, registration season, end of the semester, and I think at least within the CSU system, many of our folks are salary, and so especially during these budget cuts, it's a lot of folks doing multiple things within one position. And I think in order to prevent burnout and to sustain these healthy relationships, um, what I found is that it's communication is so helpful. If I don't maintain that communication, it's not going to happen. So I definitely realized that the communication, like the reach out, asking them to be in the docu task force, constantly giving them updates, in inviting them to things like this, to roundtables like this, that all comes from the DRC. It comes from me specifically. And so because they already have so many things on their plates, especially like faculty, staff, especially staff who have so much on their plate. And so I definitely think something that's helped me is maintaining calendar reminders for myself, because I'm also a very busy person. So if I'm like, oh, it's week 4 and I still haven't talk to anyone, it's not good. So I make sure to put calendar reminders for me at least like every 3 weeks, every 3 to 4 weeks, to maintain that constant communication with folks and continue to build that. I think something that has really helped for the DRC is we've done thank you cards. We've done thank you cards with monarch butterfly pins. We invite them to all of our events. We make sure that these individuals who are a part of our Undocumented task force, for example, who are just a part of the network of people that we constantly ask for help, are also given a thanks. And I think that's something that I've realized. We have a lot of people like in bursars, for example. Students don't know who people from bursars are, but I'm constantly bugging them when I have 30 students who are ready to pick up their DSIG check. And so a thank you card and a monarch butterfly pin really went a long way. I had so many people from bursars who were so thankful for them. Like, nobody has told me thank you. Like, nobody has, like, acknowledged this work, because for them it's like, yeah, I'm giving you a check. I'm sorry, but for it's a student, it's like, no, you're giving me a check. Like, now I can, now I can sustain myself. And so I definitely think that doing the thank yous, doing the thank you cards, putting calendar reminders for every 3 weeks to, hey, how are you doing? Or having that back and forth communication is very helpful with sustaining the relationships, and also acknowledging that it has to come from the DRC. It has to come from the specialist, the coordinator, the director, whoever that individual is.
Thank you, Kim. Sounds like definitely appreciation can go a long way. And stepping away from transactional relationships, but rather being able to build genuine relationships with people in the department. So thank you so much for highlighting that. Now we are approaching the end of our panel. And so the last question that I have for you all is, so if you can share, and if you can, keep it to one word, no pressure. What advice do you have for campuses who want to build or strengthen their ecosystem support?
Establish strong working relationships with financial aid and admissions immigrants, if you can. Again, I think that's very critical for our students. And so that is very, very important. And with establishing those relationships, it's the ultimate goal of helping the student and getting as easy access of what they need.
Beautiful. Thank you.
I think for me, I'm gonna kind of connect to Dr. Abby, is especially within the CSUs, it's very top down. So it's very like what leadership wants in terms of like distributing resources and funds and so forth. So push, 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 and build that relationship with your VP of Student Affairs if you're at a CSU or a UC. Make sure you have a strong relationship with leadership, and you will get all the support that you need.
I agree with both, and I would also say take opportunities to celebrate. I think there is, Ines shared that question, and it's important to recognize that a lot of folks who work in our Dream Resource Center have lived experience, right? And they're sharing in this burden as well, not only as people who care about the community, but also they might be impacted themselves. So it's important to also take time to acknowledge what's happening, but to also celebrate all the incredible work that's happening at the institutions. And so that means, opening space for staff and faculty to be able to do that. And of course, incorporating students in that.
Thank you all so much. So I do want to just thank you all so much for your knowledge, your wisdom, your expertise, and for sharing it with all of us. And we are going to be sharing the contact information of our panelists at the end of this session. So if there are questions, we won't have time for questions at the moment, but thank you all so much. And there will be opportunities for folks to submit their questions as well. Thank you all so much. And so we're now going to transition to our next section of today. So we are going to be collecting questions from folks. So we do want to give you all an opportunity to ask some of the questions that maybe came up during the panel discussion, or maybe some pending questions. So we're going to go ahead and share that later today, so stay tuned. I'm not gonna go ahead and pass it on to Madeline to lead our next section.
Yeah, so thank you again to our panelists for sharing a lot of the practices, right, especially around relationship building and who are those key actors that can support the ecosystem on your campus, and what role they can play also in that ecosystem, right? And so we do want to give folks a chance to kind of like digest, connect with other folks, and reflect on some of the information shared with us today. And so we're going to transition into like a 10-minute breakout groups randomly assigned. We have some guiding questions here for you in the screen that we'll also throw in the chat for folks to kind of discuss in their breakout rooms. Feel free to also discuss other things in your breakout rooms, hopefully related to the topic, or to just connect with other folks there. But if you do feel called to do so, think about the role that you see yourself playing right in the Undocumented student support ecosystem. What has been challenges that you've seen in building institutional support? What are maybe some opportunities and ideas you're taking from this session? And what are some like next steps you'd like to do beyond this session too? And so we'll do about 10 minutes of that. Hopefully folks can stick around to connect with different people. So we're going to go ahead and open up the breakout rooms for that in about 1 minute. We'll again take 10 minutes for folks to do that too. So I'll go ahead and open those breakout rooms. Oh, you know what? I didn't assign the panelists. Let me pause recording.